Chapter 658. Immerse looked at the huge cave. The ancestral dragon's soul scanned the surroundings and realized that the huge cave was hundreds of thousands or even millions of kilometers wide. It was hard to imagine that there would be such a huge cave. Such a huge cave was more than enough for all the people on Earth to live in. Immerse came to the center of the huge cave according to the ancestral dragon soul's memory. There was a circular pattern with a radius of thousands of kilometers in the center of the cave. This circular pattern was engraved with a very simple yet mysterious pattern. If an ordinary person looked at it, there would be nothing but the pattern. However, according to the ancestral dragon soul's memory, Immerse knew that there were thousands of ancestral dragons' inheritances hidden in the pattern. There were ancient memories, cultivation techniques, and even some weapons among the inheritances. These weapons were not made of metal or other materials. They were all energy. Once bound to the user's body, they could be nurtured by the user's body and eventually develop into the most suitable weapon for the user. Immerse's foot stepped on the center of the huge pattern. The next moment, spherical bubble-like spaces began to appear on the huge pattern. There were thousands of ancestral dragons' inheritances in these spaces. Immerse glanced at them. These spaces were different from the ones he had seen before. They should have been created by the ancestral dragon through some means. However, Immerse was too lazy to study them in detail at this time. With a thought, he kept the thousands of ancestral dragons' inheritances into his Earth space. The next moment, the huge circular pattern began to glow with white light. The light became brighter and brighter, and Immerse seemed to melt in the light. The next moment, the scene in front of him changed. He came to a dark cave. It turned out that the huge circular pattern was also a teleportation array. As long as Immerse activated it with the dragon's soul, he could be teleported to this dark cave. The ancestral dragon's weapon was hidden in this dark cave. This cave was not as big as the previous one, but it was not small either. Its radius should be thousands of kilometers. It was thousands of kilometers from the top to the bottom. There was a huge mountain in the center of this 1,000-kilometer-wide cave. The mountain was connected to the top and bottom of the cave. It looked a little strange. Hundreds of thick chains were inserted into the mountain and the other ends were inserted into the walls of the cave. It looked as if it was trying to lock down the mountain. Immerse couldn't help but frown. According to the ancestral dragon's memories, this mountain was his weapon. However, there were no such chains in the ancestral dragon's memories. With a thought, he tried to summon the weapon in the mountain. The mountain peak was also trembling with his summons. The surrounding chains rattled from the vibrations, but the vibrations were too light. It was impossible for them to collapse the mountain. According to Immerse's memories, he understood. This ancestral dragon had done too much evil in the past and was subdued by the other 11 ancestral dragons. His body was destroyed and his dragon's soul was poured into the starry sky forest. At the same time, his weapon was sealed in this mountain. It was impossible for Immerse to open the seal in a short period of time. The only way to open the weapon was to find the blood of the 11 ancestral dragons and drip it on the mountain. However, it had been 10,000 years. It was unknown if the 11 ancestral dragons were still around. Even if he could find the 11 ancestral dragons, it was also unknown if they would help him. He might not be the ancestral dragon from before, but who knew if they would believe him? Immerse tried all kinds of methods to destroy the mountain, but he realized that brute force would not work. With his current ability, he could easily destroy this huge cave, but the mountain peak would still stand tall and not fall. Helplessly, he could only give up on taking out the weapon. After all, with his current ability, he could do whatever he wanted in this universe even if he didn't use any weapons. As long as he didn't meet the 11 ancestral dragons, he was invincible in the universe. Thinking of this, Immerse shook his head. With a thought, he arrived at the entrance of the starry sky ocean. The 6 4th-grade super-evolved dragons were overjoyed when they saw Immerse arrive. Instructor Mo, you're out. Instructor Mo, are you alright? Immerse nodded and said, I'm fine. Then, with a thought, 6 bubble-like spaces appeared around him. There was a cluster of energy flashing in each space. Mosher said to the 4th grade super evolved dragons, you guys have worked hard to protect me for the past 8 years. Take these things back and study them yourself. As for how much you can improve, that will depend on your own luck. The 6 4th grade super evolved dragons were overjoyed when they heard this. They quickly knelt on the ground. Thank you, Instructor Mo. Thank you, Instructor Mo. Mosher did not say much. Go back. The 6 super evolved dragons quickly got up and reached out to touch the empty cannons. However, the moment they touched the empty cannons, they popped and disappeared like soap bubbles. The cluster of light in the empty cannons entered their bodies through their fingers. Some cultivation methods instantly appeared in their minds. At the same time, they realized that the cluster of light was actually a cluster of energy. This energy could be turned into an energy weapon according to the strength of the user's body, the degree of use, and the cultivation method. This energy weapon was more powerful than any other weapon in the world. This made the 6 of them overjoyed. They quickly followed Mosher and left. The government soldiers looked at each other when they saw this. They found the treasure. They found the treasure in such a short time. Moreover, it seems to be some sort of incredible treasure. They said that there was nothing inside, but I managed to find some incredible treasure in less than 10 minutes. Moreover, I gave one to each of the 6 of them. The government soldiers were all green with envy. However, they could only be green with envy. There was nothing they could do about it. However, there was a saying that there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall. News of this would soon spread throughout the South Light Star region. In truth, it wasn't that Mosher wasn't being cautious. Rather, there was no need for Mosher to be cautious now. I'm already invincible. Is there something wrong with my head if I'm still so cautious? Mosher then led the others to Cloud Sea Planet. Cloud Sea Planet was now under the rule of Konghai. The country was peaceful and prosperous. Over the past 8 years, Cloud Sea Planet had not experienced any war. Cloud Sea Planet had changed greatly compared to 8 years ago. However, Konghai was still brooding over the fact that his instructor Mo would never return. Chapter 659. Even though Cloud Sea Planet was at peace and all industries were developing in an orderly manner, Konghai still had one great regret in his heart. His instructor Mo would never return. It had been 8 years. There had been no news of him in these 8 years. Even as optimistic as he was, he didn't think Mosher could return. Meanwhile, Mosher's students at Cloud Sea Academy were all heartbroken. Their instructor Mo had left, just like that. He hadn't even left behind a single word. In these 8 years, they had all graduated from Cloud Sea Academy and entered various industries in society. However, they would often think of Mosher in their free time. They would think of Mosher's teachings and the various 9 dragon transformations that Mosher had taught them. It was these 9 dragon transformations that made their abilities far more outstanding than the other dragons. It also made their status in society much higher than the other dragons. It also caused their gratitude and nostalgia for Mosher to grow stronger and stronger. What saddened them the most was the fact that such a mentor would never come back. It was under such circumstances that Mosher brought the 6 4th grade super evolved dragons back to Cloud Sea Planet. Mosher didn't go to Konghai's residence. Instead, he went straight to the lakeside villa. It had been 8 years, but Lei Ren was still living in the lakeside villa. Mosher scanned the place with his dragon's soul and found that everything in the room he used to live in was still in its original state. It seemed like Lei Ren was quite considerate. He scanned the place again with his dragon's soul and found that Lei Ren was still in Cloud Sea Academy. Lei Ren had now become an assistant instructor at Cloud Sea Academy. It hadn't even been 10 years since he had joined the academy. It was already impressive for other students to advance from 1st grade to 2nd grade in 10 years. However, he had become an assistant instructor in a single leap. It was all because of Mosher's teachings. However, he would often think of Mosher in his free time, just like the other students. Moreover, he thought of Mosher far more often than the other students. After all, he lived with Immerse every day. Moreover, he and Immerse were both friends and teacher. Their relationship was much deeper than that of the other students. At this moment, the 6 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragons had gone to the Star Lord's residence. One could only imagine how shocked and delighted Kong Hai was when he saw them. Before the 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragons could say anything, Kong Hai's first words were, "It's great that all of you are back." The second sentence was, "Where's Instructor Imo?" Since these people had returned, Instructor Imo would definitely return as well. When Kong Hai heard that Instructor Imo had returned to the lakeside villa, he immediately dropped everything he was doing and rushed to the lakeside villa. When he saw Immerse, Kong Hai could not help but tear up. He had fought on the battlefield 10 times and never shed a single tear. When she saw Immerse return, her eyes were already wet. He repeatedly invited Immerse to stay in his Star Lord mansion, saying that the conditions there were much better than here. However, Immerse was used to staying here and was not willing to move. Besides, Immerse knew that since he had just returned, there would definitely be many people coming over. For example, the instructors of the academy and his students. If he moved to the Star Lord mansion, it would be inconvenient for them to move over. When Kong Hai saw that Immerse was unwilling to move out, he decided not to force him. Over the next few days, just as Immerse had expected, it was not just the instructors and students of the academy who came to visit Immerse. Even some of the other forces on Cloud Sea Planet sent people to visit him. In the past, Immerse would have preferred peace and quiet. With so many people coming and going, it made him very uncomfortable. However, he had stayed in the Forest of Stars for 8 years, and he had not seen many people in these 8 years. Now that he could see so many people, his mood was much better. At the same time, news of Immerse obtaining a treasure from the depths of space spread throughout the entire South Bright Star region. Moreover, the news spread with great detail. Some even knew that Immerse did not obtain any treasure, but the ancestral dragon's legacy. Immerse found it strange that they knew so much. Apart from the 6 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragons, no one else knew that he had obtained the ancestral dragon's legacy. How did they know? Immerse scanned the area with his dragon soul. Now, his dragon's soul was tens of thousands of times stronger than his dragon's will. With a simple sweep of his dragon soul, he could steal the memories of everyone in Cloud Sea City. However, he only stole the memories of the 6 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragons. Through the memories of these 6 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragons, he knew that it was one of the 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragons who had leaked the news. That Ultra-Evolved Dragon told his son about the legacy. His son then told his friends about it, and the news spread like wildfire. If it was in the past, Immerse would have fled far, far away at this moment. However, the current Immerse did not need to care about such things. He had already reached the realm of the ancestral dragon. Why would he care about these ordinary dragons? He continued to live his life as usual. The next day, the 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragon who had leaked the news brought his son over. He kicked his son, causing him to kneel in front of Immerse. "Instructor Imo, it is my own fault for telling him about the ancestral dragon's legacy. I didn't expect him to tell his friends about it while he was drinking. That's why the news spread and brought great danger to you. Please punish me, Instructor Imo." The 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragon's son also knew that he had caused great trouble. He knelt on the ground and trembled, not daring to say a single word. If it were 8 years ago, Immerse would have killed this 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragon's son. However, the current Immerse did not need to do so. He waved his hand and said to the 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragon, "You don't have to worry about that. There is nothing in the Myriad Dragon Star region that can hurt me now. However, your son needs to be taught a lesson. He will probably cause a lot of trouble in the future if he continues like this." The 4th-grade Ultra-Evolved Dragon let out a sigh of relief when he heard this. He had thought that Immerse would severely punish his useless son. If the punishment was severe, he might even kill his son. Even though he knew that it was his useless son who had caused this trouble, as a father, how could he not feel sorry for his son? After all, he only had this one son. Now that Immerse had no intention of punishing him, he was naturally very grateful to Immerse. Don't worry, Instructor Immerse. When I return, I will lock him up for 3 years according to the family rules. At the same time, the many forces in the South Bright Star region heard that Immerse had obtained the ancestral dragon's legacy. They were all eager to make a move. At the same time, Kong Hai heard of this news and quickly sent people to investigate. At the same time, he set up defenses around Cloud Sea Planet to prevent those forces from attacking. Therefore, when those forces arrived at Cloud Sea Planet, they discovered that Cloud Sea Planet was completely defenseless. The vice president of Amaterasu Association laughed. He looked at the two leaders of the Heavenly Wolf Gang and Endless Battle Blade. The two of them also had smiles on their faces. They all had a tacit understanding. The way they saw it, Cloud Sea Planet knew that it couldn't withstand their attacks, so it had given up. Thus, the three of them ordered the gang members behind them to head straight into Cloud Sea Planet. The Heavenly Wolves sect had 10,000 members. Endless Blade had 8,000 players. Amaterasu organization had 10,000 members. They all headed into Cloud Sea Planet. Behind them, more than a dozen other forces also followed in. Even though it was impossible for them to get anything from these three forces, but what if? If the three forces ate meat, they should at least get some soup. They quickly arrived in the sky above Cloud Sea City. Just like the heavenly soldiers in Journey to the West, they didn't land on the ground at all. They just floated in the air above the city. The citizens of Cloud Sea City couldn't help but panic when they saw so many people flying over. What's going on? Is there going to be a war? Why didn't we hear anything about it? Damn, that's the Heavenly Wolf Gang. I saw their uniforms. And that's the Endless Battle Blade Gang and Amaterasu Association. All three forces are here. What's going on? What's going on? And there are over a dozen other forces behind them? I know. Didn't they say that someone on Cloud Sea Planet obtained the ancestral dragon's inheritance? Are they here to steal it? The matter of the ancestral dragon's inheritance had caused a huge uproar. The entire internet knew about it, so it was impossible for the citizens to not know about it. Why should the people of our planet give the ancestral dragon's inheritance to them? How shameless. Keep your voice down. You're finished if they hear you. In my opinion, we can't protect the ancestral dragon's inheritance at all. It's better to just hand it over to them. Even though they're shameless, there's nothing we can do. All rules are laughable in the face of strength. Just as the citizens were discussing, the vice president of the Amaterasu Association spoke. Planet Lord Cloud Sea, hand over the ancestral dragon's inheritance. Kong Hai had known about it a long time ago. He cursed in his heart. These bastards were 2F** king shameless. They'd agreed that anything found in the Star Ocean or Star Forest would belong to whoever found it. Now, these fellows were trying to take it from him. He condensed energy wings and flew up with over 100 guards. He faced the tens of thousands of people from the other forces. You're not following the rules. Kong Hai spoke as he glanced at the lakeside villa. Huh, rules? The vice president of the Celestial Empire stroked his beard with a trace of ridicule in his eyes. We're all adults. Don't talk about rules in fairy tales. Rules are for the weak. The vice leader of the Celestial Wolf Gang spoke, hand over the ancestral dragon's inheritance or die. At this moment, a few rank 6 super-evolved dragons of the Endless Blade flashed and instantly appeared by Kong Hai's side. One on the left, one on the right, one on the front, and one on the back, they surrounded Kong Hai. The endless war blades in their hands were already pressed against Kong Hai's head and heart. This was the method of the Endless Blade. When they wanted to kill you, there was nothing you could do. The vice president of the Endless Blade only spoke 5 words, are you going to hand it over or not? In the face of such an enemy, the hundreds of guards around Kong Hai could not protect him at all. As for the citizens of Cloud Sea City, all of them had terrified expressions on their faces. There were even some cowardly ones who had collapsed to the ground. It's over. It's over. Cloud Sea Star is finished. If we don't hand over the ancestral dragon's inheritance, Cloud Sea Star will really be finished. However, right at this moment, a scene that shocked everyone happened. The arms of the 4 assassins who were pressing the endless blade against Kong Hai suddenly melted like blood coming into contact with fire. Chapter 661. The arms of the 4 assassins who were holding the endless war blade against Kong Hai suddenly melted like snow in fire. It melted like chocolate when it was heated. The most terrifying thing was that the 4 assassins did not even feel anything. They watched helplessly as their arms melted away, followed by their legs, their lower bodies, and finally their heads. All the tens of thousands of dragons witnessed this moment with their own eyes. They were all in disbelief. What was going on? They didn't see any attacks at all, nor did they see any defensive or counterattacking array formations. Why did they melt all of a sudden? The citizens of the city were flabbergasted by this scene. The tens of thousands of dragons in the sky couldn't help but feel a little panicked. They quickly scouted the surroundings, but no matter how they scouted, they could not find anything. Even the vice presidents of the Class 7 Super Evolved Dragons could not find anything. They pointed at Kong Hai and scolded, "Kong Hai, how dare you be so presumptuous? Are you trying to start a galactic war?" Kong Hai knew that Immerse had made his move, so he became firm. What a joke. So many of you came to Cloud Sea Planet to steal. What's wrong with us defending ourselves? We are the ones who started a galactic war. Sure enough, the bigger the fist, the bigger the argument. But I'm afraid your fists are not big enough today. Before he finished speaking, a figure appeared in the sky between the 2 sides. This person was dressed in black, and his face looked ordinary. His temperament also looked ordinary. If one did not look carefully, they would think that he was a very ordinary dragon. However, he was not ordinary because he was floating in the sky without any external help. When he appeared just now, he did not appear in an instant. Instead, he appeared in the sky slowly and silently. If he did not purposely let the other dragons see him, they would not have noticed his sudden appearance. He floated there as if he was one with the heavens and earth. He was nature, and nature was him. All the dragons sensed that something was wrong. The tens of thousands of invading dragons could not help but tremble. You are. The vice president of the Amaterasu Association hesitated for a moment before asking. The other dragons were also listening attentively. The ancestral dragon's inheritance that you want is mine. Immerse said slowly. The president of the Amaterasu Society hesitated for a moment before saying to Immerse, I see. I am Amaterasu, the vice president of Amaterasu Association. I'm not here to steal it, but I have been ordered by the higher-ups. Since you know why we are here, please hand over the ancestral dragon's inheritance. Otherwise, if the higher-ups come personally, I'm afraid they will bring an even bigger force than us. At that time, planet Cloud Sea will be destroyed. He knew that Immerse wasn't a pushover, so he used his powerful background to pressure him. Immerse smiled when he heard this. He couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on these people. With a thought, the president of the Amaterasu Society began to melt. Before anyone could panic, the president's body had completely melted and fell from the sky. Then, everyone from Amaterasu Association began to melt. One must know that the Amaterasu Association had sent over 10,000 people. But now, these 10,000 people were beginning to melt. When the rest of the forces saw this, they were all terrified. The vice president of Endless Blades saw this and knew that things weren't going well. He quickly ordered the 8,000 assassins behind him, retreat, retreat now. However, it was already too late. The moment he gave the order, his body had already split apart. That's right. His body didn't melt. It was torn apart. The assassins didn't even have time to run. Rip. 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 They were all torn apart. In just a few seconds, the 8,000 assassins had all turned into pieces of flesh and fell from the sky. When the Heavenly Wolf Gang's vice leader saw this, his eyes were filled with fear. He quickly crushed the space formation in his hand and tried to use it to escape. However, the moment the spatial array formation appeared, his body suddenly collapsed like a collapsing sand sculpture, instantly flowing down. The space formation around him collapsed and turned into a small black hole. Then, it quickly disappeared. The space formation was useless here. As for the 110,000 faction members behind him, they were like sand sculptures that had suddenly lost their moisture and collapsed in an instant. These 10,000 people were like grains of sand, drifting down from the sky. All the people below were dumbfounded when they saw this. They recognized the person in the sky. It was Instructor Mo. Wasn't Instructor Mo a 4th or 5th grade super evolved dragon? How did he suddenly become so powerful? He didn't even need to lift a finger to exterminate tens of thousands of people. As for the remaining forces in the sky, they were all dumbfounded at this moment. They had thought that with the 3 major forces here, they would be able to enjoy some soup while the 3 major forces ate the meat. But in less than 2 minutes, the tens of thousands of men from the 3 major forces had all been exterminated. They were still thinking about the soup. What was there to drink? In their terror, the leaders of several forces in the sky hurriedly begged Mo. Sure, Senior, please let us go. We deserve to die. How dare we offend you? Mo. Sure didn't wait for them to finish. He simply said, since you deserve to die, then die. As he spoke, he waved his right hand. Dark clouds instantly gathered in the sky. Bolts of lightning intertwined with one another amidst the dark clouds. Crack. 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 All of a sudden, tens of thousands of lightning bolts blasted downwards. In just a few seconds, they had struck the tens of thousands of dragons. All the dragons that were hit were instantly turned into charred human charcoal. The wind blew, and they were reduced to black powder that scattered into the distance. After doing all this, Mo. Sure slowly descended from the sky as if nothing had happened. He returned to his lakeside villa. At this moment, the civilians of Cloud Sea City who had witnessed all this were all looking in the direction of the villa. What grade was Instructor Mo? A 10th grade super evolved dragon? Even a tier 10 super evolved colossal dragon would not be able to kill so many people so effortlessly with so many methods. Could it be that he was an ancient dragon? That's right. He must be an ancient dragon. Heavens, they actually had an ancient dragon here. It was important to note that it had been tens of thousands of years since an ancient dragon had appeared in the Myriad Dragon starfield. They weren't the only ones who thought so. Even Kong Hai and his officials thought so. In truth, they couldn't be blamed for being ignorant. They had never heard of the ancestral dragon. Naturally, they didn't know that Mo. Sure wasn't an ancient dragon at all. Instead, he was an immemorial ancestral dragon, an immemorial ancestral dragon. Chapter 662. Mo. Sure had wiped out tens of thousands of dragons as effortlessly as blowing off dust. After that, he returned to the lakeside villa as if nothing had happened. He wasn't showing off, but after reaching the ancestral dragon realm, these dragons were just ants in his eyes. Did he have to show off after killing a group of ants? However, in the eyes of the residents of the Cloud Sea City, Mo. Sure was like a god. After all, even if a rank 10 super evolved dragon came, it wouldn't be so easy to kill tens of thousands of dragons. They didn't even see how Mo. Sure did it. After a long time, all the residents began to worship in the direction where Mo. Sure disappeared. They had believed in gods all their lives, but they had never seen one. Now, even if Mo. Sure wasn't a god, he seemed to have godlike abilities. At this moment, those who complained that Mo. Sure didn't hand over the ancestral dragon's inheritance were secretly nervous. Teacher Mo. was so powerful, he couldn't have heard what they said just now, right? If he really heard it, how would Teacher Mo. punish them? If Teacher Mo. wanted them to die, what could they do? The more they thought about it, the more afraid they became. These people worshipped Mo. Sure even more sincerely. In the Cloud Sea Academy, whether it was the teachers or the students, all of them were extremely shocked. They never would have thought that their teacher, who was usually just a teacher, would be so powerful. Many of the 6th grade students in the Cloud Sea Academy were stronger than their teachers, and these students had never seen Immerse fight in the academy, so many of them called Immerse the Water King. It meant that Immerse only knew theory and didn't know how to fight. The students he taught were indeed powerful, but his own strength was very ordinary. However, now that they saw Immerse's strength, they were all secretly afraid. Some students even wanted to challenge Immerse. Fortunately, they didn't. If they did, they would have been embarrassed. Lei Ren and the students under Immerse, even though they had more contact with Immerse and knew that Immerse was very strong, they were still extremely shocked. They knew that teacher Immerse was very strong, but they didn't expect him to be so strong. This was almost beyond a level 10 super evolved dragon. At this moment, everyone was thinking that Immerse was an existence that surpassed a level 10 super evolved colossal dragon. He was an ancient colossal dragon. At the same time, Kong Hai removed his wings and arrived at the lakeside villa. As soon as he entered the lakeside villa, his expression was extremely solemn. Instructor Immerse, we've killed the people from the various major powers. The major planets will definitely not let this matter rest. I'm afraid, Immerse waved his hand to stop him from continuing. Come at me. These 3 words were said very casually. If an ordinary person were to hear it, it would sound like a casual remark in life. It's going to be windy. It's going to rain. However, in Kong Hai's ears, these 3 words were filled with a domineering aura. At the same time, this also reassured him. Then, when the time comes, the people of Cloud Sea Planet will all rely on Instructor Immerse. Immerse waved his hand. He gestured for Kong Hai to retreat. It had been 8 years since he had spent time with Happy. Now that he finally had time to spend with her, he was constantly disturbed by so many people and matters. This made Immerse a little unhappy. Kong Hai also understood Immerse's intention. He immediately bowed to Immerse. Then I'll take my leave first. When Kong Hai left, Immerse entered Earth space and brought Happy and the other 2 out. He was now the ancestral dragon, invincible in the world. Even if the colossal dragons found out that the 3 of them were not colossal dragons, so what? Who would dare to do anything to them? At the same time, on Sirius Star. When the life signals of all the Sirius gang members disappeared, the Sirius gang leader received a report. He could not help but be furious. Who in the southern underworld star region dares to provoke the Sirius gang? Destroy Cloud Sea Planet. In the southern underworld star region, the Sirius staff was considered a colossus. There were more than 600 planets in the southern underworld star region, and the Sirius gang had branches on more than 500 of them. Their members had reached more than 500 million. The 100 planets that did not have branches were too remote for the Sirius gang to care about. If the Sirius gang wanted to destroy a remote planet, no one would dare to say anything. Even if the government saw it, they would only turn a blind eye. Soon, the Sirius gang leader personally led more than 1 million members to the remote Cloud Sea Planet on more than 300 giant battleships. At the same time, the same thing happened on Amaterasu and Endless Planet. The president of Amaterasu Association led more than 1 million members, while the president of Endless Blade led more than 700,000 assassins to the heart of Cloud Sea Planet. The Star Lords of Amaterasu and Endless Star region naturally received the report, but they did not care. It wasn't the first time that the few forces on their planet had destroyed other planets. In any case, after these forces destroyed the other planets, their Star Lords and their entire planet would obtain many benefits and resources. So, go ahead and destroy them all. At the same time, the government of the entire southern underworld star region naturally received the report. In the past, they would turn a blind eye to it, but this time, they directly closed both eyes. This was because these organizations had only destroyed the most inconspicuous planet. Cloud Sea Planet was too far from the center of the star region. The government rarely had the chance to manage it. Now that it was destroyed, it was peaceful. At the same time, the smaller forces from before were also very excited. They also sent out their members to chase after these 7 million dragons. This time, the 3 major guilds were going to destroy Cloud Sea Planet, and these smaller forces were going to follow. Even if they could not eat meat, they could at least drink soup. In the end, the total number of dragons reached 5 million. 5 million might not seem like a lot compared to the hundreds of millions of residents of Cloud Sea Planet, but these 5 million dragons were all at least grade 10 evolved dragons. In addition, their commanders were all at least grade 5 evolved dragons. In particular, the leaders of the guilds were all grade 8 evolved dragons. Therefore, this force was now the strongest existence in the Southern Underworld Star region. It could be said that in the Southern Underworld Star region, they would kill anyone who stood in their way. At this time, Cloud Sea Planet discovered all of this and quickly reported it to Kong Hai. The citizens of Cloud Sea Planet were terrified. It's over, it's over. Let's surrender. I know Instructor Mo is very strong, but no matter how strong he is, can he fight against an army of millions? The citizens were always like this. In the face of danger, they would not think or analyze carefully. Instead, they would follow the crowd. After Kong Hai received the news, he immediately went to find Immerse. After Immerse heard this, he still said the same 3 words, "Bring it on." Chapter 663. When Wang Yi heard that the entire southern Darkstar territory's 3.5 million soldiers were heading toward Cloud Sea, he only said 3 words. Come as you wish. On this day, thousands of battleships arrived near Cloud Sea. Each battleship was over 10 kilometers long. The thousands of battleships stretched for hundreds of kilometers. The 3.5 million dragons on the battleships were all very excited. Many people hated interstellar wars, but there were also many people who loved interstellar wars. For example, the dragons on the battleships. Almost all of them were warriors. In the 10,000 dragon star territory, warriors had no use during peacetime. Only when war broke out would these warriors be of use. Especially in large-scale interstellar wars, they would be even more useful. Now was the time for that. Moreover, as long as they won this invasion of Cloud Sea, they would be able to gain a lot of benefits. It might even be more than what they earned in their entire lives. As for losing? Sorry, how could they lose? The 3 major forces of the Southern Darkstar territory had sent out their most elite forces. If they still lost, the 3 major forces would be too embarrassed to continue living. As for the rumors that a powerhouse had appeared on Cloud Sea? What a joke. How strong could he be? In the entire Southern Darkstar territory, the strongest powerhouse was an 8th grade super evolved dragon. There had never been a 9th grade super evolved dragon. Now that the 3 major star fields had sent out 3 8th grade super evolved dragons, how could they not deal with a single 8th grade super evolved dragon? As such, they were very confident in their victory in this battle. Brothers, if we win this time, how do you plan to spend your money? A dragon warrior asked. Do you still need to ask? Get a wife. Do we still need to get married? If we win the war, can't we just steal a wife from Cloud Sea? I'm old. I don't need to think about anything. The money I've earned this time is enough for me to retire. After I make a fortune here, I'll travel the entire 10,000 dragon star territory. I'll use the money I earned to buy cultivation resources and become a super evolved dragon as soon as possible. The battle hadn't even started yet, but they had already thought about how to spend their money. Gradually, the thousands of battleships approached Cloud Sea's spatial transfer station. The giant dragons of planet Cloud Sea had already received Kong Hai's orders. They quickly abandoned the space transit station and fled back to planet Cloud Sea. The warriors on the thousands of battleships were not surprised to see Cloud Sea leave for the transfer station. A single spatial transit station only had about 10,000 soldiers. In front of their army of 5 million, in front of their 1,000 battleships, they were even worse than ants. If they didn't abandon them, were they going to wait for death? After occupying the transfer station, their next step was to land on Cloud C planet. The thousands of battleships passed through the transfer station and arrived at Cloud C's orbit. Cloud C. After flying around the Cloud C planet 5 times, it slowly descended. Finally, black dots began to appear in the sky of the Cloud C planet. Gradually, the black dots grew bigger and bigger, and everyone could see that they were all giant warships that were 10 kilometers long. Seeing this, the people of the Cloud C planet panicked again. Oh no, they're coming. Isn't Instructor Mo very powerful? Why hasn't he shown himself yet? What a joke. Only 3.5 million came last time. There are so many this time. No matter how strong he is, can he kill so many? At this moment, the warship in the lead with a huge wolf head painted on it started shouting, "Brother Zhang. Cloud C, you have 5 minutes to hand over the ancestral dragon's inheritance. Otherwise, don't blame us for slaughtering Cloud C." He spoke the last few words in a very strict tone. Obviously, there was no room for negotiation. At this moment, Starlord Kong Hai and Immerse were watching all of this from the city below. Kong Hai asked Immerse, Army's instructor, "Just tell me what to do." "I'll definitely do it. Just watch," Immerse said indifferently. In the next moment, his figure slowly disappeared. When he appeared again, he was in the sky, and he was over 10,000 meters away from the thousands of battleships. All the residents of the city were shocked when they witnessed this scene. Last time, Army's instructor Mo had appeared slowly just like that and destroyed a few tens of thousands of invaders. But this time, there were 3.5 million of them. Did Army's instructor Mo think he could destroy 3.5 million dragons by himself? The invaders in the battleships were also surprised to see a single dragon standing in front of their battleships. Who was this guy? How audacious! However, the leader of the Celestial Wolf Gang snorted coldly and waved his hand at a 7th-grade super-evolved dragon. Kill him. It didn't matter who it was. Let's show Cloud C who we are first. The 7th-grade super-evolved dragon nodded and gave an order to the battleships. See that target? Fire at him. The next second, over 1,000 thick pillars of blue plasma shot out from the battleships. They almost instantly engulfed Immerse. The next second, when these pillars of plasma vanished, the place where Immerse had been standing had become a massive ball of light with a radius of over 10 kilometers. A massive explosion occurred in this ball of light, and it was earth-shattering. The air was distorted, and the ground was trembling. A ball-shaped shockwave spread out in every direction. Fortunately, Cloud C City was protected by a defensive array. Even so, Cloud C City, which was protected by the defensive array, continued to tremble. Just the shockwave from the explosion was already so powerful. It wasn't hard to imagine how powerful those pillars of plasma were. Yet, when the explosion ended, a silhouette was still hovering in the air. He didn't seem to be injured at all. Not only was there no damage to his body, but even his clothes were undamaged. The citizens of Cloud C City were overjoyed to see this. It seemed Instructor Mo was much more powerful than they had imagined. The hearts of the dragons on the battleships trembled at the sight of this. Every single one of those pillars of plasma was enough to scorch a 4th-grade super-evolved dragon's skin and flesh. The explosion caused by thousands of plasma beams could easily kill a Class 7 super-evolved giant dragon. Even a Class 8 super-evolved giant dragon would lose a layer of skin even if it did not die under the bombardment of so many plasma beams. Yet, this guy's clothes weren't even damaged by the bombardment of so many pillars of plasma. What kind of damned method did he use? While they were still wondering, Immerse's body started to change. His body was rapidly expanding, reaching a height of more than 10 kilometers in just 5 seconds. In another 5 seconds, he had reached 50 kilometers. In another 5 seconds, he had reached 100 kilometers. As his body grew larger, his body also underwent earth-shattering changes. A pair of horns appeared on his forehead. Chapter 664. As his body grew larger, Immerse's appearance changed as well. A pair of horns appeared on his forehead. The horns were like the antlers of a deer on earth. His head was like a camel's. His eyes were like a rabbit, his neck like a snake, his belly like an alligator, his scales like a fish, his claws like an eagle, his palms like a tiger, and his ears like a cow. Together, they formed a creature that the dragons had never seen before. The divine dragon of Huaxia. At the same time, the dragon's body was huge. It was over 100 kilometers long. The 10-kilometer-long battleships were like toys in front of this dragon. A creature that had never appeared before them, and it was so huge. This made all the dragons panic. Not only were the invaders panicking, even Kong Hai felt a fear that came from the depths of his heart quietly enveloping his entire body. As for the citizens of Cloud Sea City, they seemed to have a phobia when they saw this huge creature. All of them lowered their heads and crawled on the ground, not daring to look up. The invaders' faces changed drastically when they saw this huge creature. Not good, run. The leader of Endless Warblade quickly shouted. Retreat. The president of Amaterasu Association also exclaimed. Run. The leader of Celestial Wolf Gang exclaimed in disbelief. Just as they were exclaiming, the dragon slithered through the night sky. It did not have wings, but it was able to slither through the sky like a snake. In the next moment, his huge tail came crashing down on the fleet. The first to bear the brunt of the attack was the warship that the president of Amaterasu Association was on. The president of Amaterasu Association saw that he could not avoid the attack, so he quickly retreated outside of the fleet. In the next moment, there was a rumble. Immerse's tail came crashing down, and more than 20 warships in the fleet exploded. The dragons that were hit by Immerse's tail were instantly turned into minced meat. With a single swipe of his tail, more than 8,000 dragons were killed. This scene made the eyes of the dragons who had yet to die widen. They thought that by following the three major forces to invade this planet, even if they could not eat the meat, they could at least get some soup. However, they did not even get to see a drop of soup, and they were about to die. Immerse's tail had only managed to kill over 8,000 people. In the eyes of the other dragons, it was indeed terrifying, but Immerse was not satisfied. If this continued, when would they be able to kill all three? 5 million of them? His body snaked around the entire fleet. Then, it opened its cave-like mouth and faced the entire fleet. He let out a long howl. Roar, roar, a dragon's roar reverberated between heaven and earth. When all the creatures on Cloud Sea Planet heard the dragon's roar, they all fell to the ground and trembled. Even the sea of clouds above the sea of clouds began to churn violently. The residents of the city instantly turned ghastly pale when they heard the dragon roar, and all of them seemed to have been flabbergasted on the spot. Even if this giant dragon wanted to fly down and take their lives, they would not resist at all. The entire fleet was in an even more miserable state. With a single roar from Immerse, all the battleships in the fleet exploded. Boom, 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 boom. Under this roar, the bodies of the dragons in the battleship all exploded. Boom. 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 Even the super-evolved dragons, the president of the Amaterasu Association, the leader of the Endless Warblade, and the leader of the Celestial Wolf Gang, all of whom were 8th-grade super-evolved dragons, exploded as well. They were only 8th-grade super-evolved dragons, while Immerse's power had reached the level of an immemorial ancestor dragon. He was 2 grades higher than them. It wasn't excessive to kill them with a single roar. The bodies of all 5 million dragons exploded, turning into a rain of blood that rained down from the sky. In addition, the wreckage of the battleships continued to fall from the sky. Fortunately, there was a defensive array beneath the city that kept the wreckage of the battleships away. However, the rain of blood could not keep them away. The entire city was instantly enveloped in the color of blood. If one looked from above, they would see the entire city shrouded in a layer of crimson mist. Just a single glance at it was enough to instill fear in one's heart. Immerse had destroyed the entire fleet of 5,000,000 dragons with a single attack. Pride rose in his heart as he raised his head and laughed. Oh! The dragon's roar reverberated throughout the world once more. The entire Cloud Sea planet felt the pressure of an immemorial ancestor dragon once more. As an immemorial ancestor dragon, destroying the entire Cloud Sea planet was only a matter of thought. However, Immerse had no intention of destroying the planet. He wandered around the world for a while, stirring up the clouds in the sky. He then sensed the vast energy within his body. At this moment, his body and heart were radiating a domineering aura of supremacy. 5 minutes later, he finally finished wandering in the sky. He transformed into his human form once more and landed in the city. One had to admit that transforming into an immemorial ancestor dragon made him feel extremely comfortable. It was like going to a sauna. When the residents of the city saw Immerse land in the distance, they remained prostrated on the ground, not daring to move at all. Although Immerse had transformed into his human form, they had sensed the vast energy within his body. Just a dragon's roar was enough to make them tremble for a long time. Kong Hai waited for a few minutes before he walked over while trembling with fear. "M.O. Instructor M.O." Immerse waved his hand. "All right, clean up the battlefield." With that, Immerse's figure flashed and returned to the lakeside villa. After he left, the residents of the city remained prostrated on the ground for a long time, not daring to get up. That mysterious and enormous creature was simply too terrifying. A few days ago, Immerse had destroyed an army of over 30,000 by himself. They already felt that Immerse was very powerful. But at least that was still within the scope of what they could barely understand. However, the strength that Immerse displayed today had far exceeded their understanding. Such a gigantic creature, with such terrifying power, could exterminate 5,000,000 dragons with a single roar. This caused all the dragons to be filled with fear. If someone were to say that this enormous creature could split a planet in half with just a tail, they would not doubt it at all. After a long time, someone slowly raised his head and said in disbelief, "Was that an astral beast?" I don't know. But I heard that astral beasts are very powerful and can easily destroy planets. Then it's very likely that he was an astral beast. But in the information I've seen about astral beasts, there's no mention of such a huge creature. At this moment, some students began to feel fear. They used to look down on Instructor M.O. when they were in the academy. Now that they thought about it, they realized how stupid they were back then. Chapter 665. Immerse had killed 3,500,000 giant dragons in a single move. This caused all the residents of Cloud Sea Planet to be extremely shocked. Immerse's strength had far exceeded their scope of understanding. In their eyes, Immerse was no longer just a super-evolved giant dragon, nor was he an ancient giant dragon. As for what he was, they did not know. Perhaps only the word God could describe Immerse. Thus, in the next 2 months, some high-ranking officials and nobles of Cloud Sea Planet would come to visit Immerse from time to time. Immerse did not refuse the visits of these high-ranking officials and nobles. They basically brought gifts when they came, and they knew that with Immerse's strength, normal gifts would not be able to move Immerse. Thus, they usually came to visit Immerse with expensive gifts. One businessman gave Immerse a villa. This villa was one of the best in Cloud Sea Planet, and it was located in the most prime location in Cloud Sea City. The prime location did not mean that it was the most prosperous area. There was an area at the edge of Cloud Sea City, and it was backed by a mountain and facing a lake. There were about 50 villas there. The villas here had elegant surroundings and a wide view. Furthermore, no one dared to disturb them. Each villa was worth tens of millions of dragon coins. Ordinary people did not even have the right to look at them, let alone think about them. The villa had 3 floors, and there were gardens and lawns around it. The total area was more than 2,000 square meters. It was quite luxurious to be able to live there. Moreover, it was very quiet, and it was the best for Immerse, who liked peace and quiet. Thus, on the second day after receiving the villa, Immerse brought Happy, Emma, and the others to live there. When Happy and Emma saw such a big villa, they were also pleasantly surprised. They also liked being able to live there without being disturbed by outsiders. After living in the villa, people sent Immerse flying devices, servants, and so on. In any case, as long as they were needed in daily life, they were all the best in Cloud Sea Planet. On this day, Immerse called Emma over and asked her to call her silly son over as well. In the end, Immerse placed his right hand on her son's head. The next moment, Emma's foolish son's eyes suddenly became clear. After a short while, her son's spirit seemed to have completely changed. After Immerse's hand left, Emma looked at Immerse and then at Emma. Then, he called out emotionally, "Mommy." Emma was stunned at first, and then tears flowed out of her eyes. Previously, it was only in Immerse's earth that his son could regain his intelligence. He didn't expect that his son, who was outside, had recovered. She pulled her son into her arms and hugged him tightly. Her greatest happiness was that her son could truly recover. Thank you, big brother Emo," Emma quickly thanked him. Immerse shook his head. "I've already said that I would help your son recover. It's just that I didn't have the ability in the past. Now that I have the ability, of course I have to fulfill my promise." Emma's son then said to Emma, "Mom, not only have I recovered, but I've also received the ancestral dragon's inheritance." Hearing this, Emma thanked Immerse again and bowed deeply. Immerse waved his hand. "Emma, you're one of the first few people to follow me. There's no need to thank me." Then, Immerse looked at Happy. "Happy, I've said before that I would find a way to make you speak. Although I don't have the ability now, we can travel the entire 10,000 Dragon Star region. I believe that there are thousands of planets in the entire southern underworld star region. There must be a way to make you speak again." Happy nodded. A pair of eyes that seemed to be able to speak looked at Immerse. It was as if he was saying, "Big brother Emo, I'll listen to you." From the first time he saw Immerse at the corpse farm until now, he followed Immerse to the 10,000 Dragon Star region. From when Immerse was just an ordinary corpse farmer to now, he was an existence that could easily destroy a planet in the 10,000 Dragon Star region. He always followed Immerse wholeheartedly. Being by Big Brother Mo's side always made him feel at ease. Even if he couldn't speak from the beginning to the end, he would be content. Moreover, they had been in the 10,000 Dragon Star region for so long, but they hadn't gone out to play. Now that Immerse was strong, it could be said that he was invincible in the entire 10,000 Dragon Star region. They could finally go out to play. Thinking of this, Happy felt very happy. At the same time, the news that Immerse had killed the 3.5 million people had spread throughout the southern underworld star region. Of course, they only knew that an expert had killed the 3.5 million people, but they didn't know who it was or how it was done. Even if the battleship they were on sent back images. When the people of these planets studied the images, they found that there seemed to be electromagnetic interference in the images. They could only see a blurry and huge shadow. Then, everything returned to normal. At this point, the planets in the southern underworld star region were all wary of the remote Cloud Sea planet. In the past, they looked down on the Cloud Sea planet. But now, the Cloud Sea planet seemed to have become the demon king of the southern underworld star region. Some of the giant dragons even felt like they were going to hell when they had to go to the Cloud Sea planet. At the same time, this news began to spread in the 10,000 Dragon Star region. Legend had it that there was an extremely powerful existence in the southern underworld star region that had destroyed an army of 5 million people. Legend had it that this powerful existence was a giant star beast that could transform into a human form. It could transform into a human form, and it could also transform into a giant. It had destroyed an army of 5 million people with a single slap. This was the terrifying part of the truth that was constantly distorted in the process of spreading. However, more than half of the people didn't believe this. After all, this was too incredible. They just treated it as a story. In the history of the 10,000 Dragon Star region, there had never been a giant star beast that could transform into a human form. Not to mention a giant. On this day, Immerse left the Cloud Sea planet with Happy and Emma. They went directly to the most central planet in the Southern Underworld Star region, the Southern Underworld Star region. On this planet, Immerse brought Emma, Happy, and the others to play while asking about Heaven's Sayers. He really did find out about Heaven's Sayers here. However, in the stories about Heaven's Sayers, there was basically a sentence like this: never let Heaven's Sayers speak. Immerse couldn't help but smile bitterly. Don't let Heaven's Sayers speak. Wouldn't that mean that Happy would never be able to speak? After leaving the Southern Underworld Star region, Immerse brought Happy and Emma to other planets in the Southern Underworld Star region and stayed for about half a year. In this half a year, they had almost visited all 650 planets in the Southern Underworld Star region and tens of thousands of other uninhabited planets. Chapter 666. In this half a year, Wang Yi brought Happy and Emma to every planet in the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone. There were 650 life planets inhabited by dragons and tens of thousands of uninhabited planets with harsh environments. However, they couldn't find any information on how to cure the oracle on these planets. Instead, they were constantly warned not to let the oracle speak. Other than that, there was no other information about the oracle. Immerse had no choice but to bring Happy and Emma to other star zones to search. On this day, they arrived at West Flame Star Zone. West Flame Star Zone was similar to South Bright Star Zone in that it also had 650 planets. There were tens of thousands of uninhabited planets with harsh environments. The main planet of West Flame Star Zone was called West Flame Star. Immerse brought Emma and Happy directly to West Flame Star. Most of the dragons on West Flame Star were fire elemental dragons. Especially on West Flame Star, 90% of them were fire elemental dragons. Their research on fire elemental could be said to have reached the pinnacle. The dragons of other star zones couldn't compare to the dragons of West Flame Star in their research on fire elemental theory and practice. At the same time, they had already used fire to the extreme in West Flame Star Zone. They didn't need to light their own fire to cook. Many of the machines that required energy didn't need any energy either. They directly used their own fire elemental energy. Even some of their small warships used their own fire elemental energy. Immerse and the others went directly to West Flame Star's main city, West Flame City. They asked around for information about the oracle here. After 2 days of asking around, they didn't find anything. They planned to stay on West Flame Star for another week. If they still couldn't find anything, they would go to other planets. On this day, Immerse and the others asked around for a long time and came to a restaurant to rest. This restaurant faced the river and was backed by a bustling street. It was really a good place. It was said that this was the best restaurant in the entire West Flame Star Zone. There were no private rooms in the restaurant, but there were more than 2,000 seats. Every seat had a view of the river. Immerse and the others ordered. After the dishes were served, they began to eat and drink while chatting. About 20 minutes later, they heard the noise of people downstairs. Then, 3 dragons who looked like young masters slowly walked up the stairs. These 3 young masters were all dressed in brocade robes. They looked like the kind of hedonistic sons of rich parents. The other dragons who were chatting excitedly while eating lowered their heads and ate silently when they saw the 3 young masters. The 3 young masters looked around and then sat down at the table next to Immerse. How is it? Brother Wang, Brother Zhao. Are the girls you played with today hot? One of the young masters said. Right on time, right on time. Brother Sikong really knows how to play, ha 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 ha. Brother Sikong, when can we play again? Aren't you afraid of kidney deficiency? Young Master Sikong laughed loudly. That so-called Brother Zhao straightened his body. Don't worry, I, Zhao Wuji, may not be good at other things, but when it comes to women, if I dare to say that I'm third, no one would dare to say that they're second. Brother Wang smiled and asked, Oh, if Brother Zhao is only second, then who is first? That Brother Zhao laughed and said, of course it's Brother Sikong. When it comes to playing, it still depends on Brother Sikong. I can only concede defeat. Ha 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 ha, that Brother Sikong seemed quite proud. Well said, well said. Just as he said this, Brother Zhao's gaze suddenly fell on Emma. Instantly, a look of amazement flashed across his eyes. When Brother Wang saw this, he followed his gaze and looked at Emma. Then, he shifted his gaze from Emma to Happy. With this look, he and Brother Zhao both revealed looks of amazement in their eyes. Brother Sikong saw that the two of them seemed to be a little dazed and couldn't help but be puzzled. What's wrong? Brothers. Only then did Zhao Wuji come back to his senses and said, Brother Sikong, the women we played with today are indeed not bad, but turn around and look at these two women. They're called high-quality women, right? Brother Sikong also looked back and couldn't help but be dazed with one look. Then, he turned his head and winked at Brother Wang and Brother Zhao. Brother Zhao, you asked when we'll play again? In my opinion, there's no time like the present. Let's play today. The two of them naturally understood what he meant and immediately got up and walked toward Immerse's table. Sikong came to Immerse's table and sized up Emma and Happy without restraint. Then, he said, looking at your clothes, you don't look like locals, right? Since you're guests from afar, I'll toast you. As he spoke, he picked up the wine cup on the table, filled it to the brim, and handed it to Emma. Beauty, drink this small cup, and young Master Sikong will bring you to taste the delicacies of the world. Big Brother Wang and Big Brother Zhao surrounded Happy from behind. The surrounding diners all secretly sympathized with Immerse and the others. However, they didn't dare to make a sound and could only bury their heads in their food. Brother Wang and Brother Zhao, on the left and right, wanted to press on Happy's shoulders. However, just as the two of them stretched out their hands instantly disappeared. They were eating here, and Immerse didn't want to make it too bloody and violent, so he directly used his spatial skill to cut off their arms. It wouldn't be too bloody. The two of them lost their arms, but they didn't feel any pain. However, this made them even more terrified. What's going on? Where are my hands? Where are my hands? They had never seen such a strange scene. It was as if no one had attacked them, but their arms had suddenly disappeared. At that moment, young Master Sikong also noticed the abnormality. When he saw the two of them lose their arms, he suddenly turned to look at Immerse. When Immerse saw that they didn't move, he knew that Immerse must have done it. How dare you attack my Brother Wang and Brother Zhao? Just as he finished speaking, both of his arms had already disappeared. Young Master Sikong's face instantly turned pale, and he was extremely terrified. How dare you attack me? I think you don't want to live anymore. Just as he said this, young Master Sikong's body had already split into two. Then, he instantly disappeared. At the same time, a figure instantly appeared in the air. This figure was dressed in black, and his face was covered by a black veil. Judging by his strength, he was actually a rank 8 super evolved dragon. Shadow Guard. When the diners who were eating saw this person, they immediately cried out in alarm. The Shadow Guard was the strongest organization in the entire Western Flame Star City. Their organization was similar to an assassin's organization, but they didn't kill people. Instead, they protected people. It was similar to security. As long as you paid them, they would protect you. It didn't matter if you were a good person or a heinous villain. Even in the entire Western Flame Star, the Shadow Guard was a famous security organization. Chapter 667. The Shadow Division got its name because they came and went without a trace. Not only were they elusive, but every single one of them was also very strong. It was said that the weakest member of the Shadow Division was a Grade 1 super-evolved dragon. Just think about it. On the entire Cloud Sea planet, there were less than 10,000 super-evolved colossal dragons. It was said that there were more than 100,000 types of Shadow Division members. And these 100,000 plus dragons were all super-evolved dragons. It was obvious how powerful the Shadow Division was. It was said that the strongest Shadow Division member was a Grade 9 super-evolved dragon. Among the hundreds of billions of dragons in the entire Western Flame Star Zone, the number of dragons that could reach Grade 9 could be counted on one hand. It was said that there were 4 Grade 9 super-evolved dragons in the Shadow Division. It was also because of this that the Shadow Division became the most powerful organization in the entire Western Flame Star Zone. The Shadow Division only cared about getting paid to do things. They did not care if you were a good person or a bad person. In this star zone where the strong preyed on the weak, it was obvious that the bad people were much richer than the good people. Therefore, most of the people the Shadow Division protected were bad people. Therefore, the Shadow Division was not a kind organization in the eyes of the people in the Western Flame Star Zone. Instead, it was an organization that worked for the bad people. Although everyone knew that most of the people he protected were bad guys, and the entire organization was equivalent to an evil organization, the people of the Western Flame Star region did not dare to voice their anger. No individual or organization dared to go against the Shadow Division. At this moment, the Shadow Division member appeared. The killing intent in his eyes was directed at Immerse. Young Master Seekong shouted at the Shadow Division member like a pig being slaughtered, "Kill! Kill him! Kill this bastard!" However, the Shadow Division member could tell that Immerse was very strong from Immerse's actions. Therefore, he did not attack directly. Instead, he said to Immerse, "Sir, can you spare young Master Seekong's life today? We Shadow Division members would be very grateful." This sentence was firstly to introduce themselves and let Immerse know their identity as Shadow Division members. Secondly, it was to let Immerse be wary of their identity and let young Master Seekong live. When he said this, the people eating around them were all surprised. That was because the Shadow Division was the most powerful organization in the Western Flame Star Zone. Even the government could make them angry. If a Shadow Guard wanted to protect or kill a person, there was no need to discuss with others. He could just do it directly. But why did this Shadow Guard want to discuss with this person? Young Master Seekong was even more furious. What's the point of discussing with him? Just kill him. That was because she didn't pay any attention to him. She just stared at Immerse with a burning gaze. Immerse was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He waved his right hand. Shwa, the figure of the so-called young Master Seekong instantly vanished. The surrounding diners looked at each other in dismay. What a guy. She clearly knew that young Master Seekong was protected by the Shadow Guards. However, he didn't care at all and killed young Master Seekong with a wave of his hand. Moreover, didn't he know who young Master Seekong was? Could it be that this fellow didn't even care about the Shadow Guards, the #1 organization in the entire Western Yen Star Field? Wasn't this courting death? The Shadow Guard's face under the mask immediately turned ugly, and his gaze became extremely sharp. "You won't have a good ending if you go against me." As he spoke, the Shadow Guard got up to leave. From Immerse's actions just now, he couldn't tell how Immerse had killed young Master Seekong. He didn't even know if Doomsday had used some spatial technique to trap young Master Seekong or kill him directly. Therefore, he knew that he wasn't Immerse's match at all. Moreover, not only was he not Immerse's match, he even felt that this guy in front of him was stronger than the 9th grade super-evolved giant dragons in the Shadow Guards. Could this guy be a 10th grade super-evolved giant dragon? Therefore, even if Immerse ignored him and killed young Master Seekong, he didn't dare to stay any longer. He immediately turned to leave. However, Immerse couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He looked back again. The Shadow Guard also disappeared. After doing all this, Immerse acted as if nothing had happened. He said to Happy and Emma, "Eat, eat. Eat more." The surrounding spectators were all dumbfounded. Too strong. This guy was really too strong. He actually attacked the Shadow Guard without holding back. He obviously didn't care about the Shadow Guard at all. It should be known that the Shadow Guard was the #1 force in the entire Western Yen Star Zone. Even if the super forces of the other star zones came, they wouldn't dare to be so unscrupulous in front of the Shadow Guard. Only the Central Star Zones organization, which claimed to be full of 10th grade super evolved giant dragons, would dare to be so arrogant in front of the Shadow Guard. However, compared to the Central Star Zone, the Western Yen Star Zone was considered a very remote place. They wouldn't come to such a remote place. Then who was this guy? Which force did he come from? Why was he so strong? All of these had become a huge mystery, lingering in the hearts of these diners. After Immerse and Happy finished their meal, they slowly went downstairs. They slowly strolled around Western Yen City. They planned to wait for another 2 days. When they couldn't find any news about the Oracle, they would go to the other star zones. At the same time, the news of Doomsday destroying the Shadow Guard with a wave of his hand quickly spread throughout Western Yen City. Killing the Shadow Guard was a huge matter in Western Yen City. The speed at which the news spread was much faster than before. Soon, the entire city was talking about the Shadow Guard's death. Hey, did you hear? The Shadow Guard was killed. How could someone dare to kill the Shadow Guard? Does he want to die? It's true. I saw it with my own eyes. Young Master Sikong was also killed. What? Young Master Sikong was also killed? Young Master Sikong is the Star Lord's son. When Immerse and the others walked to the street and heard the discussions, they couldn't help but turn to look at Happy. Happy's eyes seemed to be able to speak as he looked at Immerse. It was as if he was saying, "Is it really okay to kill the Shadow Guard and that young Master Sikong?" Immerse gave Happy a comforting smile and said, "Don't worry. It's fine." This matter quickly reached the ears of the Star Lord, Sikongzhen. The Star Lord, Sikongzhen, was a rare giant lightning dragon. Moreover, he had reached 9th grade super evolved. When he heard that his disappointing son had been killed, he was instantly furious. Although his son was a good-for-nothing, which father would be willing to see his son killed? He roared, "Pass down my order. Tell all the Shadow Guards to hunt down that guy at all costs." In fact, there was no need for him to give the order. The Shadow Guards had already started looking for Immerse in the city. In the entire Western Yen Star Zone, the Shadow Guards were the dignity of the Shadow Guards. No force or person dared to touch the Shadow Guards. In the past, the enemies of the people protected by the Shadow Guards could only retreat when they saw the Shadow Guards protecting them. Today, not only were their clients killed, even their Shadow Guards were killed. How could they tolerate this? Chapter 668. In the Western Flame Star region, it was extremely easy for the Shadow Guards to find someone. Moreover, Wang Yi had no intention of hiding his tracks. In less than 15 minutes, 300 Shadow Guards had surrounded Wang Yi and the others at a crossroad. It wasn't just the Shadow Guards either. There were about 500 subordinates of the Star Lord's residence as well. Not only did they surround Immerse and the others on the ground, but they also surrounded them in the sky. There was no chance for Immerse and the others to escape. The originally sunny street was now covered in dark clouds. The pedestrians hurriedly hid in the buildings on both sides of the street. The people of the Star Lord's residence were still manageable. The strongest among them was only a grade 8 super-evolved dragon. Most of them were below that. The Shadow Guards were different. They were all super-evolved dragons. More than 300 Shadow Guards were equivalent to more than 300 super-evolved giant dragons. No one had ever seen so many super-evolved dragons at the same time. More than 300 super-evolved WYRMS appeared on the street at the same time. The air within a 5-kilometer radius seemed to have solidified. Even though these super-evolved WYRMS did not attack, the oppressive feeling they brought was enough to suffocate ordinary people. Before these 300 super-evolved dragons and 500 warriors of the Star Lord's residence, Wang Yi, Happy, Emma, and Emma's son looked like 4 lonely boats in the middle of an ocean. They were also like 4 candles in a storm. They looked like they could be overturned and extinguished at any moment. Star-Lord Sekongjin of Western Flame had also rushed over after hearing the news. Sekongjin had already become a grade 9 super-evolved dragon. He had been in a high position for a long time. He had an unparalleled aura of dominance and majesty about him. At this moment, he lowered his head and looked down at Immerse and the others. He let out a deafening roar. Who killed my son? I will kill all 9 generations of his family. At the same time, the leader of the Shadow Guards flew out from among them. It was a person completely covered in a black robe with a hood over his head. His face could not be seen at all. His voice was cold and sinister. Star-Lord Sekong, this person killed my Shadow Guard. Please hand him over to me so that I can answer to the Star-Lord. According to the rules of the Shadow Guardians, if a Shadow Guardian of a planet was killed, the Shadow Guardian leader of that planet would have to capture the murderer and report to the Shadow Master. Only by catching the murderer can you, as the leader of the Shadow Guards, atone for your crimes. Otherwise, the leader of the Shadow Guards would have to cut off one of his arms. From this, it could be seen that the Shadow Guards were very protective of their members. Because of this, the members of this organization had always been very loyal. Now that this leader was unwilling to cut off his own arm, he naturally had to capture Immerse and bring him to the Shadow Lord. At this time, Sekongjin was already furious. Blue and white lightning flashed on his body. His roar also seemed to be mixed with the crackling sound of thunder. But he killed my son. If I don't kill him today, I won't be able to vent the hatred in my heart. The Shadow Guard leader pondered for a moment and said, Star-Lord Sekong, if you want to kill him to vent your anger, I can explain it to the Shadow Lord. I'm sure the Shadow Lord will agree to your request. So let me bring him back first, and then the Shadow Lord will hand him over to you. At this time, Sekongjin was furious. How could he care about this? Do you think I can still wait? Today, I will pull out his tendons, peel off his skin, and dig out his bones. Star-Lord Sekong, please calm down. The leader of the Shadow Guards persuaded. Do you think I can still calm down? Where are the Star-Lord's personal guards? The 500 giant dragons of the Star-Lord's mansion immediately shouted in unison, Here. Go. Remember, I want him alive. I want to capture him and torture him. I want him to live a life worse than death. However, at this time, the Shadow Guards didn't need the leader's order. They all stepped forward and blocked in front of the Star-Lord's personal guards. When the people in the buildings on both sides of the street saw this, they all secretly said in their hearts, that guy is finished. Whether it is the Star-Lord's mansion or the Shadow Guards, they are all people he can't afford to offend. Now that he has offended all of them, his life is finished. Not only finished, his 9 generations will be exterminated. Didn't you hear? His 9 generations will be finished. I really don't know who gave him the courage to offend the Shadow Guards and the Star-Lord's mansion. Both sides were discussing how to deal with Immerse, as if Immerse was already in their bag. At the same time, Immerse smiled faintly. He looked at the figures in the sky, then glanced at the figures surrounding him. Beside him, a bloodthirsty light flashed in Emma's eyes. Now that she had obtained the ancestral dragon's inheritance, she had evolved into a rare species that had almost never appeared in the 10,000 dragon star zone. In the past, she had to use her mouth to touch the opponent's body to suck their blood. Now, Emma had evolved to an extremely terrifying level. Not only had she reached the level of a level 10 super flower dragon, but her blood-sucking technique had also undergone a qualitative leap. Wang Yi knew what Emma was thinking. With so many super-evolved dragons around, they would be great nourishment for her. So he nodded at Emma. It seems that our method just now was too gentle. It's time to let them see a little blood. Emma immediately nodded when she heard this. She turned and looked at her son beside her. Her son had also obtained the ancestral dragon's inheritance and was currently cultivating. He was now a level 5 super-evolved giant dragon. He already knew about his mother's methods. At the same time, because he had obtained the ancestral dragon's inheritance, his horizons had been raised infinitely. Therefore, he was not at all uncomfortable with his mother's methods. Emma suddenly leaped up and stomped her feet on the ground. She instantly appeared in the sky. When she leaped into the air, the ground beneath her feet started to crack inch by inch because she had used too much strength to step on it. The shadow guards and the warriors of the Star Lord's mansion in the sky all spread out slightly. At the same time, they were also surprised. Emma had flown into the sky too quickly. She was so fast that they couldn't even see her clearly. It was also because of this that the shadow guards and the warriors of the Star Lord's mansion noticed Emma. They only knew that this man was very powerful. They didn't expect this woman to be so powerful as well. At this moment, Emma's body started to change. Her body started to grow rapidly. She didn't turn into a giant dragon, but a giant. She was a gigantic and sexy beauty that was 10 kilometers tall. Apart from her size, she looked exactly the same as Emma from before. However, at this moment, a pair of Blood Clan wings began to grow on his back. Chapter 669. In just a few seconds, Emma had transformed into a 10-kilometer tall giant. She was a 10-kilometer tall, sexy woman with a curvaceous body. A pair of large vampire wings sprouted from his back. The color of the wings was as red as blood, giving people a strong visual impact. The expressions of all the super-evolved dragons changed when they saw this. They were all super-evolved dragons. They could also reach a length of several kilometers when they transformed into their dragon forms. However, they had never heard of anyone who could reach a height of 10 kilometers in human form. In their shock, the dragons all transformed into their dragon forms. Every single dragon that transformed into a dragon was at least 700 to 800 meters long. Some were even several kilometers long. Their appearance instantly caused West Flame City to become extremely crowded. At this moment, Emma made her move. Hundreds and thousands of crimson tentacles suddenly emerged from Emma's body. These tentacles shot out in all directions like lightning. Pu-pu-pu-pu. Pu-pu-pu. Almost instantly, more than 50 giant dragons were pierced by these seemingly soft tentacles. Moreover, the blood in their bodies was rapidly absorbed by the tentacles after they were pierced. In the end, all 50 of these dragons turned into dried corpses and fell from the sky. It was important to note that the strongest of these 50 dragons had reached 5th grade super-evolved. Yet, even a 5th grade super-evolved dragon could not endure the attack of these tentacles and was instantly killed. Too strong, really too strong. The leader of the Shadow Guard's expression changed when he saw this. Judging from the aura that Emma had released earlier, he knew that this woman was no ordinary dragon. She was very likely a super-evolved dragon of a higher grade than him. A 10th grade super-evolved dragon. His expression turned extremely ugly when he thought of this. A 10th grade super-evolved dragon. That was an existence that even the Shadow Lord did not dare to provoke. It was said that the Shadow Lord was only a 10th grade super-evolved dragon. If a 10th grade super-evolved dragon was truly angered, even the Shadow Lord would not be able to do anything if the dragon started slaughtering the Shadow Guards. As a 10th grade super-evolved dragon, the Winter Lord could remain undefeated against a 10th grade super-evolved dragon. However, he could not guarantee that his subordinates would not be killed. That was the terrifying aspect of a 10th grade super-evolved dragon. Sikongzhen, the Star Lord of West Flame Planet, was also shocked. He was only an 8th grade super-evolved dragon. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that the one who harmed his son would be a 10th grade super-evolved dragon. However, the trouble had already been stirred up, and it was too late for regrets. Moreover, he knew that these people were vicious and merciless. Begging for mercy was useless. His only chance was to escape while these people were not paying attention to him. In fact, that was exactly what he did. He activated a spatial teleportation device and wanted to take the opportunity to escape, but when he activated it, he couldn't escape at all. Usually, the spatial teleportation device worked every single time and almost never broke down. Why was it stuck at such a critical moment? Naturally, he did not know that this was because Immerse had controlled the surrounding space. Although Immerse's main attribute wasn't space, as a dragon that was proficient in all attributes, he had a good understanding of the space attribute. When Sekongjin wanted to escape, he had just activated the spatial teleportation device when he felt spatial fluctuations. Then, with a thought, the surrounding space was completely sealed. At this moment, not even an ant could crawl out of West Flame City, let alone a dragon. Just as Sekongjin was wondering what was going on, a crimson tentacle suddenly reached over. Pooh! It pierced through Sekongjin's heart. Sekongjin cursed in his mind. It was over. He could only feel the blood in his body being rapidly sucked dry by this tentacle. No! Don't kill me! Sekongjin let out a final scream, but it was already too late. All the blood in his body had been sucked dry by that crimson tentacle. Meanwhile, he had turned into a shriveled corpse with a horrifying appearance. He fell from high up in the sky and was smashed into pieces after landing on the ground. With Sekongjin's death, all of Sekongjin's imperial guards fell into chaos. They all fled in every direction as if their lives depended on it. However, who could escape from Emma's tens of thousands of tentacles? No one. In the end, all 800 dragons under Sekongjin's command were absorbed by Emma without exception. He then turned and stared at those shadow guards. Senior, we might have just had some misunderstandings before. Since it's a misunderstanding, let's all stop. From now on, you and I will mind our own business. There will be plenty of time in the future. Let's meet again. The leader of the shadow guards looked at Immerse and said. Naturally, he had already seen through it. Although this was a 10-kilometer tall female giant and was extremely powerful, the leader of these people was still that black-clothed young man who had been standing on the ground and looking up at the sky. Based on his experience, the leader of these people should be Immerse and not this 10-kilometer tall woman. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a crimson tentacle shot towards him like lightning. Immerse naturally wouldn't pay attention to him. Misunderstanding? King died a long time ago. You can't beat us now and you say it's a misunderstanding. If I was a little weaker and got caught by you guys, would you say it's a misunderstanding? That's simply the greatest shame in the world. Sekongjin still wanted to say something. However, a tentacle had already shot towards him. Sekongjin hurriedly leaped up to dodge. After dodging once, twice, thrice, Emma was infuriated. She no longer paid attention to the other opponents and concentrated all her tentacles on Sekongjin. Subsequently, about 300 crimson tentacles suddenly burst out from her body. These 300 crimson tentacles were no longer scattered like before. Instead, they gathered at one point and shot towards the leader of the Shadow Guards. The leader of the Shadow Guards still wanted to dodge by moving, but when he saw hundreds of crimson tentacles shooting towards him, he couldn't help but panic. He wanted to escape, but there was no chance for him to do so. Puff 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 puff, his entire body, head, legs, and arms were all hit by the crimson tentacles in an instant. It must be known that after reaching the 9th rank super evolved giant dragon, their physical strength was extremely strong. Not to mention ordinary blades, even some treasured blades and swords couldn't hurt their skin at all. But now, these crimson tentacles easily pierced through him. It could be seen how powerful Emma's crimson tentacles were. Soon, the leader of the Shadow Guards was sucked dry and turned into a dried corpse. Then, the 300 over Shadow Guards were all easily killed by Emma. This was Emma's complete suppression of the giant dragons that were lower than her after her strength skyrocketed. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.